Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. 5 most important breakout candidates for this Texas A&M program heading into 2024. And Dill, you make no mistake about it, we've been very vocal that if things come together for Texas A&M, this is a team that has potential to be one of the most dangerous teams in the country. And a lot of the conversation kind of surrounds some of these guys that we're going to talk about breaking out in the 2024 year, fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Texas A&M fans, whether we're talking the transfer portal, the high school recruiting trail, previewing this team heading into 2024. The amount of support y'all continue to show to the fellas truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, for the Texas A&M fans, we're doing a little bit of calling our shot heading into 2024. Would love for you guys to do the same. Call your shot in the comment section. Talk about some guys that are going to break out for this Aggies program in 2024. And Dill, without further ado, let's get into it. Let's get into a guy that we were going back 12 months ago, just fired up for this kid going into year 2. Now he's going into year 3, coming back after this season-ending injury, tight end Donovan Green. And I think it starts with Collin Klein loving to use tight ends in the passing attack. Collin Klein comes in with the tight end here in Donovan Green, that in my mind is one of the more talented tight ends you see in the country and a massive breakout candidate for this Aggies program.
And I think the big thing when you go back to his freshman year, I think you saw a willingness to block, but also an ability to block in line and in space, and whether it was pulling, whether it's blocking on the perimeter. I think a guy who's a very versatile blocker, but more importantly, a willing blocker. And again, we've kind of talked about it. If you listen to us talk Collin Klein and what he liked to do at Kansas State, he needed tight ends who could block, and then he wanted to get them involved in the middle of the field, making big plays up the seam. And you just kind of look, Donovan Green, you saw the green shoots of a guy who really should be an excellent blocker in college football, but also a guy who can really run and be a bit of a difference maker that I don't think Collin Klein, frankly, had on Kansas State.
So I'll say this. I don't even know if I'd say Donovan Green is just a willing blocker. I think he's an excellent blocker. Like, what he did as a true freshman in terms of the run blocking department was extremely rare for a true freshman at the tight end position. That's what stood out to me. And you mentioned it. You're also talking about an extremely dynamic athlete that has a big-time catch radius over the middle of the field, can operate with the football in his hands. That just that perfect fit in terms of what Collin Klein wants to do, how he wants to use his tight ends. I think this kid is in for a massive breakout season that, nobody's really talking about heading into the 2024 year.
Well, they've all forgot. It's like, oh, you got injured last year, so you just forget you have a really good tight end waiting in the wings.
Next one up, and we have Ruben Fatheree. You could talk about multiple offensive linemen, and we've been very vocal that if there is one position group that really needs to come together for Texas A&M for them to be a dominant team in the SEC, is the offensive line. Now, the reason I went with Ruben Fatheree is, again, this is an offensive tackle that we've seen play very good football at times during his career. Heck, at times, he's been an NFL draft candidate. I mean, the potential and kind of the physical traits that a guy like Ruben Fatheree has, it's big time. Now, I think the question is, can Adam Cushing, can Mike Elko get this offensive line just as a unit playing better? I always felt last year that this offensive line was talented. They might have played good individually at times, but when it came to coming together as a group, getting pass pro figured out, kind of having that chemistry as an offensive line, it just wasn't there. And so you could talk about Ruben Fatheree. You could talk about Trey Zune, another guy that we've seen at times play very good football. Chase Basantes going into year 2. You expect him to take a step. Dill, there's reasons to believe this Texas A&M offensive line takes a step. Now you just have to see it happen in 2024. And if there is a most important breakout player for this Texas A&M program, it's guys like Ruben Fatheree, Trey Zune, Chase Basantes on the offensive line.
And they really, really struggled at that right tackle spot last year. They never really could find that guy. Obviously, tried Basantes, Crown over. I really didn't think anyone played particularly great at that spot. And I think you're more or less comfortable with what you have in that interior. I think guys like Naboo and Dewberry, with the right coaching, I think can be really, really good players. Some of the portal guys. I mean, at the end of the day, they need to find someone at this right tackle spot. We've talked about it. Trey Zune, again, you hope you see the talent there to be a solid enough left tackle. this right tackle spot's a huge position, and Ruben Fatheree just couldn't obviously get quite on the field last year with struggling with injuries and whatnot. But a guy who I think, again, should really be able to lock that right tackle spot up and play really well, which will be really important for Texas A&M.
And if it comes together and you have Ruben Fatheree, Trey Zune taking steps, and I don't think it's crazy to say 12 months from now, we're talking about both of those offensive tackles as NFL draft picks. Like, I think the physical traits are certainly there. I think there's a reason that Mike Elko didn't get extremely desperate in the transfer portal trying to bring in offensive tackles, because I think he gets in and say, hey, we have the guys. Now they just need to put it together on the football field. Massive storyline for Texas A&M. Going to our last offensive player, that this is just kind of my guy here. And is it the most important breakout player for Texas A&M? No, probably not, because you have three really good running backs, Ruben Owens, Le'Veon Moss, and Amari Daniels. It is one of the best and deepest running back rooms that you see in the country. The Texas A&M fans know I wasn't going to go talking breakout players without talking about Ruben Owens. I think Ruben Owens is a perfect fit for how Colin Klein wants to run the football. Again, you go back to the Kansas State film, how often, how successfully Kansas State got their running backs to the perimeter in space. My question to you guys would be, what would be a better running back to fit in this Colin Klein run system than a guy like Ruben Owens, who excels when he gets into space and can use that athleticism?
Yeah, and he's also got that really good one cut, get your foot in the ground and go with some acceleration that, again, I don't know that you have with these other running backs on A&M. And I like these. Like, I'm with you. I think it's a really, really good room. But you saw a different level of burst and explosiveness that, again, if you watched Kansas State under Colin Klein, you saw that desire to hit big plays in the run with being able to create those creases, stretching it out a little bit and putting your foot in the ground and going. And I think you're right. Ruben Owens is the guy who, if they're going to hit big plays relatively consistently, like he was able to at Kansas State with Deuce Vaughn especially, I think Ruben Owens can be the guy leading that charge.
And two things. I mean, you have Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels, two guys that are hammers between the tackles. They are going to get their work in this Texas A&M offense. I just look at Ruben Owens and say, I think he offers what kind of you said, a different level of juice. And again, I think Ruben Owens, quote unquote, struggled as a true freshman. I mean, he did not struggle that much as a true freshman, but the struggles that you saw Ruben Owens have was dealing with contact at the line of scrimmage, right? If you can consistently get him to the second level clean, he's one of the most dynamic running backs you'll see in the country. And again, Kansas State last year with Colin Klein over the last couple of years was really good at getting their running backs to the second level. If they can do that with Ruben Owens, that is a massive story for this Texas A&M offense. Now, they'll go to the defensive side of the football. This is your guy, Gabriel Brownlow. Now, you could go with a couple of different guys. DJ Hicks certainly could be one of those players. I look at this edge position and say, I don't know if there's a better group of edge rushers in the country than what Texas A&M has. If guys like Gabriel Brownlow can step up and kind of put it together going into year three, you're looking at one of, if not the best front seven you see in the country.
Yeah, I think you're right. Now, and I think, to me, I'm comparing, like, who do you take, Brownlow Dindy, or do you take, obviously, DJ Hicks? I just think Brownlow Dindy showed a little bit more up to this point, a little bit more explosiveness off the line of scrimmage, a little bit more ability to make plays in the backfield. And DJ Hicks, again, you've seen the flashes. You need to have more consistency. Even in the spring game, I thought there were too many moments where, again, not firing off the ball quick enough, not getting into guys and getting moved around a little bit and allowing holes. I think, again, Brownlow Dindy, I thought in that Oklahoma State game showed a ton. I thought he was really, really good. So I'm going with him. But again, I think that's another very important position that they need some guys to take some steps, because obviously you lose a couple guys from last year who were really good in that position. I'm really like these young guys, though. You really hope they can emerge and kind of fill those shoes.
And a guy like Gabriel, it's kind of an interesting storyline. So he comes out in the 2022 classes and kind of an undersized interior defensive lineman, and it kind of makes sense why the first 2 years there were some growing pains. I mean, this is a freak show of an athlete for the size. You go back to the high school numbers at 35-inch vert, 4.4 in the short shuttle. I mean, you are talking about special movement skills from this kid. That's why he was a top 20 national recruit coming out of high school. I think there was some growing pains in terms of dealing with the physicality that you see on the SEC offensive lines. If he can kind of, he's working through those growing pains. I think we saw him get through those growing pains against Oklahoma State and kind of put it together. You're looking at you talk about the pass rush on the edge. I think this kid could be a phenomenal pass rusher from the inside as well. Last player we got to talk about, and Dill, this is a little bit of my guy. That's Dalton Brooks. I think Dalton Brooks is the ultimate chess piece in this Texas A&M defense. You look at how Mike Elko wants his defenses to look. It's versatile. It's a lot of different looks. It's moving guys all along the formation. Dalton Brooks can just do everything you want. And we talk about that box safety, that nickel defender. It's such an important position in the modern era of college football. I mean, you have to deal with a wide variety of pass catchers, whether it's jumbo tight ends, whether it's wide receivers in that slot that are really shifty. Dalton Brooks has all the athletic traits to deal with those guys, but also has the physicality to play in the run game as well. I thought he had a phenomenal game against Oklahoma State in the bowl game. I think Mike Elko was phenomenal at developing defensive backs. I look at Dalton Brooks and say, just get to work with this kid, figure out where you want to play him, move him around, and let him go make some plays in the back end of this defense.
And I'm excited for him. I'm also excited for Javen Thomas. Those are two guys in this young secondary that I'm really excited that Texas A&M was able to keep. And frankly, allow a new coaching staff to get to work on them. And I don't think they're too infected by some of the old nonsense that infected Texas A&M defensive backs, for lack of a better term. Again, a room that had been talented and just always seemed to underperform, chronically making mistakes, giving up big plays. Again, I'm really excited to see what he can do with Dalton Brooks. Really excited to see what he can do with Javen Thomas. Two guys who, again, you kind of, when you got to see their shots on the field, I think they took it. I think they played really good football. And those are two guys I almost think will be like my measuring stick to see what Mike Elko is going to be about. If you will.
And I would add Bryce Anderson to that list too. A guy that, again, the consistency probably wasn't there for Bryce Anderson, but a guy that we know what he can do from an athleticism standpoint. And I think the beauty of this defensive back room is, all right, you have so much young talent that have just really, really high ceilings in my mind. You also have a lot of veterans that you're brought in through the transfer portal, right? Guys that have played a lot of football at the collegiate level. And so that's exactly how you want that defensive back room to look. Like, hey, if Dalton Brooks or Bryce Anderson not putting it together, we got guys that we kind of know what they're bringing in. And so you have that high floor, but you also have these players given that high ceiling. And again, for Texas A&M to reach that ceiling, guys like Dalton Brooks are going to be breaking out in the 2024 year. There are a lot of names. Noah Thomas, we're going to catch some heat in the comment section. That's certainly a name that we could have mentioned in this breakout category.
Who else probably should be there is Rodis Johnson on that interior. I know we were talking about some of the younger guys, but a guy who at Wisconsin never really felt like he played particularly great football. They took him at A&M. I was like, well, I'm a little surprised at the take. And then in the spring game, you look at him, he's dominant and looked really, really good. And again, I didn't think A&M's offensive line was playing the best football in the world either, but a guy who you're really excited to see what he can do, because there was a different level of burst, explosiveness off that line of scrimmage that it certainly should be exciting.
That's what makes this team, Texas A&M fans know. I've been saying it's one of the most exciting teams in the country. It's for a reason. Like, there's just so much, at least in my mind, untapped potential on this roster. And if Mike Elko can get that potential and kind of tap into it, you're looking at such a good team in 2024, fired up for it. There's a lot more talk about Texas A&M over the summer. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.